everybody. It's getting quiet. I think that's our cue. Welcome to the session where we talk about from discarded to desired solutions for breathing new life into food waste. I want to give you just a couple notes here as we start. We are recording the session today, so after the conference is over, you'll be able to find the session on the ReFed website if you want to refer back to it. And a little bit later on in the session, we will have some Q&A time, and at that point, we're going to bring a microphone around and ask that you ask your question into the microphone so that we capture it not only for the room but for the recording, so that we can get the context of your question for that recording. And then lastly, maybe double check your cell phones, devices, turn off ringers, that kind of thing. Appreciate it. So welcome. Yeah, we're talking about food waste recycling. I'm Hunt Briggs with RRS, and we have a great panel today to talk about food waste and what to do with food when it becomes waste. And Brad was just mentioning that this is the last room. I'm glad you all found it. It seemed to me some kind of metaphor for recycling food waste. Like after you've exhausted every other option, you. But if you look at the ReFed Insights engine, they have a really nice visual analytical tool that you can use to see how much food waste there is in the U.S. And then what they do is they take that estimated quantity, which is something around maybe 70 million tons of surplus food, and then they carve it up into disposition pathways that the food is believed to be taking today. And if you remove the pathways like field losses during harvest, and other pathways, and you look at just disposal. So you look at landfill, you look at incineration, you look at, I think there's another category that would be sort of open dumping of food waste. That quantity is around 30 million tons estimated in 2023. And that's just a stunning amount of waste that is being generated from food. And I think what is often overlooked is the amount of value that's destroyed when we turn that food waste turn that food into waste. And if you just think about maybe like 1 ton of food, you can sort of visualize it in a way that would help your mind extrapolate to that 30 million tons. But if you just thought about 1 ton of food waste, you could, I don't know, we could take like a packaged good like crackers or something like that and think about, imagine standing in a grocery distribution center and you're looking at roughly 4 pallets of crackers that are, yay high. And on that pallet, each box of crackers is something like maybe 5 ounces. I'm not sure what the average box of crackers is, but it's probably around 5 ounces. And if you collected, say, 4,000 of those boxes, you'd have about a ton of food waste. And if each of those boxes retailed for about $4, you're looking at between $15,000, $25,000 of value at the retail level, the consumer level, that instantly evaporates the moment that those crackers cease to be food and are now waste, considered a waste product. And not only have you destroyed the value, the marketable value that was created through the production, the processing, the packaging, the transportation, and what would be the marketing, I guess, if it went to market actually. And you've taken all that value and you have destroyed it immediately. And there's many reasons this happens, right? many are very difficult to avoid, but many are not. Well, today we're going to be talking with some experts in the field that are actually working to valorize that wasted food and actually capture some of the inherent value that's still there. And they're doing it in very different ways. So we're really privileged to have a strong panel today to talk about different approaches for actually taking that food waste and how to turn a situation where you're facing additional costs to manage that food waste, to get it to disposal, and you're diverting it to a higher and better use. So our three panelists, first we have Seth Goodman, and this is not in order. Maybe I will we'll hop out of order. I apologize. I wrote them down in not the right order. Seth is the co-founder and CEO of Northstar Recycling. It's an asset-light provider of sustainability-oriented solutions for the management and recycling of waste. Customers include leading companies in the food and consumer packaged goods segments. And before co-founding Northstar Recycling with his brother Noah in 2011, Seth worked in a variety of roles in the recycling industry for the prior 2 decades. Seth has a bachelor's of science in finance from Lehigh University. We have Brad Crepeau. He's a founding partner and CEO of Food Cycle Science, where he's transformed the company from a local startup into a global leader in sustainable food waste management. The company has sold products in over 20 countries, employs over 50 professionals who are disrupting traditional food waste management practices to make a positive impact. At Food Cycle Science, he reinforces Canada's commitment to sustainability and environmental responsibility on a global scale. We also have Kyle Wyche, who is co-founder and COO of Ecotone Renewables. He has a background in ecology and evolution and earned an MBA in sustainable business development and data analytics from the University of Pittsburgh. Kyle pioneered the development of the Zero Emission Upcycling System, or ZEUS, a fully autonomous biodigester that transforms food waste into valuable resources. Ecotone secured over $4 million in funding and deployed ZEUS systems across the country, primarily in the Northeast and in California. So what I'd like to do to start here is actually just have our panelists kind of introduce themselves and their company. Maybe it's your business model or your technology or whatever would help us understand what it is that you do and the solution you provide. Why don't we start with you, Brad?
Yeah, thanks, Hun. So Brad Crepeau, CEO of Food Cycle Science. We're a company focused on delivering food waste solutions at the source. That's best done by leveraging our product line, which you may know as the Food Cycler. Food Cycler is a product line that ranges from countertop solutions that you would operate in your home, all the way up through to industrial-sized solutions that you'd find in hotels like this, casinos, hospitals, generating hundreds or thousands of pounds of food waste a day. And we're really excited to soon be launching something in between for the food service industry that'll really target kind of that gap in the middle of around 100 liters a day of food waste. So we really like to think of our product line as a decentralized method of food recycling. And I'll just say that I'm really excited to kind of be here at ReFed. We've been doing this for 13 years, and I can tell you that 13 years ago, there were not this many people talking about food waste, so it's really inspiring to kind of see how that's evolved over the last decade plus, and really looking forward to talking to you a little bit more about some of the things we've learned along the way.
Seth, how about you?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. We've got a full room. There's seats up front for all those people in the back standing up. Nobody likes to sit in front. Yeah, so thank you for the intro. We work with national manufacturing companies that have made the decision at an enterprise level to outsource their waste and recycling services. And we are asset light, meaning we don't own any trucks, we don't own any facilities. Our goal is to find the best solutions for all the different waste products that our clients generate at their manufacturing and distribution facilities. The majority of our clients are in the food and beverage space, We manage approximately 200,000 tons per month of food waste that are being generated across our clients' locations. And our goal is to divert as much material from landfills as possible and find a better solution for the waste materials, primarily food waste coming from our food clients. Prior to working with us or another managed service provider, manufacturing companies have typically let each manufacturing facility choose the vendors that they want to use for their waste and recycling services. And while that works well with a facility that's really committed and is on the ball, what we have found is that most companies that are concerned about getting their product, their finished products from their facility to the supermarket. And they're not paying a lot of attention to what's going out the door as waste. So a lot of material needlessly goes to landfills. They spend too much money, and the data that is important to manage the programs is very hard to wrangle and consolidate. And so using a managed service provider for a lot of companies has been a really important decision that they've made in order to capture the value and divert material from landfills.
Great. Kyle?
Awesome, I'll jump in. Good to see everyone. Good morning, my name is Kyle Wyche. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder at Ecotone Renewables. We are building a decentralized grid of anaerobic digesters we call ZEUS, or Zero Emission Upcycling Systems. So we are primarily based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but we have deployments coming all the way out to California, and super excited to see this growth. Very happy to be here. This is our first time at ReFed, so happy to be a speaker on the panel today. Looking forward to meeting each and every one of you afterwards to talk about what you're here for and maybe how we can partner down the line. Super excited to understand more, and what we focus on is turning that lost food waste, which is in our eyes lost revenue and lost nutrients. We try to help our customers recapture that food waste, recapture that nutrients in something we call soil sauce, and recapture that revenue by providing a new revenue stream through selling that soil sauce with them. So happy to talk more and looking forward to having a conversation today.
Thanks. Seth, you were talking about, I think you said 200,000 tons a month you're managing from your customers. Where's that coming from? What's driving all that waste?
Well, yeah, I see a lot of food manufacturing clients in the audience. Ideally, when companies are manufacturing a food product, they don't want to create any waste, but there is a certain percentage of material that is going to be a waste product. There are several reasons for this. There are production inefficiencies. Oh, someone just spilled their coffee right in the front row. So there's quality issues. If there's broken pieces of pasta, if a sauce isn't colored the right way, it's not going to be put into the packaging and sold to the stores. Manufacturing companies typically overproduce because they're not sure about the demand that they're going to receive for their products. So they want to make sure they have enough or more than enough to supply to their customers. And if the demand doesn't meet their expectations, there's going to be a lot of leftover product. There's line changeovers, shifting from one product to another. That creates waste in the process. There's startup waste in the beginning of the process to make sure the ingredients are all conforming and making the product that they're trying to make. So all throughout the entire process of making a product to distributing the product, there is a lot of areas where where waste is created.
Now, Brad, you're focusing on the residential sector, and it's been estimated that half the waste being generated in the U.S., the food waste, is coming from the residential sector. So there's a huge opportunity, but it also seems more like the highest hanging fruit, if you will. Can you maybe help us unpack what we misunderstand about consumers and the way they handle waste in the home?
So households are definitely one of the areas we're focused on, and certainly one of the more challenging ones. But we also do work with municipalities. We are trying to work with the food service industry. But to your question specifically, I think awareness remains the key challenge for us at the household level. And it makes me think that visibility really will drive accountability. And part of the problem I think we run into is, well, one, most people still don't realize that food waste is an issue. And then once we get them understanding that it's an issue, they don't fully understand what options are available to them. And one of the things that we really like to emphasize at Food Cycle Science with the Food Cycler program is that we're not looking to replace any of those options. Our enemy is really the landfill. We want to divert food waste from going to the landfill. If your preferred option is curbside collection, backyard composting, or a worm bin, that's fine. We want to be a net new addition to the diversion effort. So the first step is really awareness. In our world, when we're developing products, what I truly believe is the core mandate is making sure that it's not more work. It has to be really user-friendly if we're going to get the masses to buy into adopting food waste recycling into their lifestyle. A lot of people talk about wanting to do it. It's a different reality when it's put into practice. So when we're developing a product, it's really, really important that this fits into somebody's lifestyle. If it doesn't, you'll see people start and then stop. So the food cycle is really designed to incorporate into a busy lifestyle. We take food waste, we transform it into a more stable soil amendment in hours instead of months. We're more accessible in condominiums, in multi-res scenarios where more traditional options are difficult to integrate. But it, again, all starts with that awareness. And I'll maybe just share one interesting finding that came out of our municipal program. So today we have nearly 200 municipalities across Canada and the US that engage with Food Cycler in varying capacities as an alternative to curbside. And there's a whole reason why this makes sense for those communities. But part of the program is us doing a deep dive and a lot of surveys with those participants to understand what's working. And one of the biggest, I think, things that we look to measure in any food waste program is participation. You see a lot of programs that are deploying tactics or products that unfortunately just don't get used. So we really look hard at participation. And as we were looking at those stats, one thing that stood out was people started using the food cycler less over the course of the pilot. And we're like, well, that's interesting. That doesn't feel really good. But as we kind of dug deeper, we realized that behavior started changing. So as you were using this and filling this bucket of waste every single day, that visibility drove accountability. And you started making different decisions, different purchasing decisions, and started realizing that 5 liters of food waste a day is a lot. And you start to kind of create that behavioral change. And that, to me, is the biggest impact that we can have on the food waste problem, is finding ways to drive behavioral change. We could give every single person in the world some sort of end-of-life solution for food waste. That won't be enough to solve the problem. We need to find ways to prevent it. So that was actually a really exciting finding, was bringing the visibility to the problem right to your countertop and having that create less waste over time was a wonderful kind of takeaway from incorporating our solutions into households.
I'll also add to what Brad's saying here about the awareness aspect. Something that we learned is like the data is driving everything we do at Ecotone Renewables. We're realizing that while you're seeing this on the kitchen front, how people are seeing that feedback loop, that's something we're trying to create in everything we do. So if it is the feedback loop driving the awareness and keeping people accountable, what we're noticing with schools and universities is when they want to be more sustainable, they're coming out to us asking what it would be like to have a Zeus digester on site. And the first thing we ask them is, how much food waste are you generating? They don't know. And so the first thing we do is do an audit for them. They think they're generating 500 pounds a week. In reality, they're generating 1,600 pounds a week. And it's understanding first where you're at before we know where we can go. And so, for example, how Seth was talking about with manufacturers, there's waste that comes from products that we don't need, the parts of materials or whatnot. If that's not getting documented and we're not getting the data behind how much waste that actually is, we can't understand where to go from there. And in some industries, sometimes it's a don't ask, don't tell, because still there's a whole connotation around food waste of it's negative. We don't want to be wasting food. We'd rather have that go into a meal. But if we don't talk about it and don't bring it to the awareness and forefront, we can't figure out what to do with it. So it's something we constantly talk about with our customers is how much waste are you generating first? If you don't know, how can we understand that? And then find the solution that best works for you. Whether it is an anaerobic digestion system on site, or a home system on the kitchen countertop, or larger industries and networks that we're bringing to you, like Seth is doing here. First, we have to understand where they're at.
In the last few years, we've seen really rapid growth of municipal curbside programs, drop-off programs for food waste. And I mean, the number is pretty small, like the number of programs and communities, but it's compounding pretty quickly and it's catching on, and we're seeing a trend there. Brad, you mentioned that there might be factors about those programs that might make it, a solution like yours makes sense in one context but not another. Or can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. What I'll start by saying is I think we need to stop thinking about one solution or the other. And I think there's a world where solutions can complement each other. And curbside is a great example of that. We see a great opportunity for us to work with existing infrastructure and existing programs and be additive to the diversion effort in that regard. Part two to that is, curbside works really, really well in some communities and less effective in others. And I think the great advantage to a decentralized system or program like ours is that it can scale up or down. I think the other challenge that we're up against when we consider curbside programs, it's very hard for them to go vertical. So when you think about high-rise and multi-res, a traditional green bin, won't scale in that same way. So that's an area where I think we can be attacking it together, where perhaps curbside is handling single-family homes and a more decentralized solution is tackling the multi-res problem. But the fundamental thinking needs to evolve away from this or that, and we have to widen the aperture to say, how can we integrate a variety of solutions to tackle the problem? Because a lot of I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about this, funding initiatives and policies are sometimes too one-dimensional. And I think if we're able to kind of widen that lens, it opens up the opportunity for more partnership, and that ultimately will lead to more diversion, which is certainly our ultimate goal.
So I want to talk about scalability. This is a question that we have to ask. We talk about any solution. What's the potential for it? Adoption potential. We have to think about geographies. We have to think about demographics. We have to think about lots of things in terms of what's the potential for that to actually capture as much material as possible. Kyle, with your solution, what do you think about when you're thinking about scalability?
Yeah, there's a few areas that we think about. The first one is with our customers, it's ease of operations. Something's not going to be scalable if it's not easily adopted and easily maintained. So for the anaerobic digesters that we build and sell, they're in 20-foot shipping containers. So it's easy to build, easy to put on the back of a truck, and easy to deploy. What we notice as well is we look for geographies areas that are seeing policy changes where there's no bans to landfill. We're noticing that customers are reaching out to us about solutions. And what we look for deployments is, as opposed to having a centralized hub, having this grid of deployed or systems on the grid is helping us to understand how we can meet customers where they're at and get into different areas. So for example, we could have a Zeus digester that's a community Zeus digester where there's multiple restaurants on a street, or we can get into a location where it's just a university that needs about 5 digesters at one of their, or 5 different cafeterias. The big thing that we're noticing over the last couple of years of the R&D is with that scalability came automation. Our Zeus digesters are fully automated. While we could scale and employ operators for every single one of those Zeus digesters, our goal was looking at the ratio between operator to Zeus digester. We started out with 1 operator to 1 digester, and now we're at about 5 to 1. The goal of where we want to get by the end of the year is about 10 Zeus digesters managed by 1 operator in a 100-mile radius. Eventually, it'll be 20 to 1. But that scalability is really driven by the automation, where we can now monitor all of our systems from an app on our phone or an iPad, and that helps us give insight as to when we actually have to go service these systems or when we don't have to service those systems. So we're really looking at this decentralized grid of assets as the solution for moving forward with tackling food waste where the customers are at.
That's really interesting. Seth, how do you think about scaling up?
Yeah, well, scalability, when we're working with enterprise-wide solutions with manufacturing clients, what we're trying to help them do is to derive as much value as possible from their waste products. And there are a lot of constraints because our clients have manufacturing facilities all over the US and Canada, and the infrastructure is not fully developed in all areas of the country. So part of the challenge that we face with our clients is that there might not be a viable landfill alternative within close proximity to their manufacturing facility, depending on where they are. And the other issue is, in a lot of cases, landfill is cheaper than the more sustainable solution. And so we are working with for-profit companies, and they all are very sustainability minded. However, they are also very mindful of how much does something cost to move it from the facility to the end use. So the scalability opportunity is the end users developing more solutions, whether it be anaerobic digestion, commercial composters, more animal feed producers, land application companies, to have more available outlets for our manufacturing clients to send these 200,000 tons per month of food waste, where it's both cost effective and more sustainable.
So this is a question for all of you. You might have noticed it's been a bit of a dynamic time economically and politically. Wondering if you're seeing any changes in decision making from your customer base, from businesses, consumers. Brad, why don't we start with you if you have thoughts on that?
Sure. I like to challenge the team, right from the point of design through to mass production, with the challenge that if we can create a solution that is not more work and doesn't cost more money, we stand a really good chance to deploy that at scale. Now, that's very difficult at the start, but it's certainly a utopia to strive for, because I think one of the challenges with penetrating these solutions at scale is that you're often met with an audience who is being asked to pay more and do more work to achieve the end goal. And that's a really difficult proposition. So if we can create an environment where this actually delivers a more functional lifestyle, if we're making their life more convenient and solving a pain point for them, and either being cost neutral or potentially reducing costs, then that's a really strong environment to scale. I think with the current regulatory setup, there are cost incentives that present themselves more in the commercial sector, because in most cases they're paying for that waste management, and if you can reduce that, there's some sort of ROI. And I think that's less present at the household level, where we really need to see some change with policy and regulation to try and create that incentive or build the carrot that allows for the type of adoption we need to see real change.
Seth, what are you seeing in terms of customers repositioning, or are they still investing in technologies like depackaging and other types of things?
Yeah, certainly on the outlet side, there's a lot of investment in new end users for the waste products. But from a macro level, what we've been seeing since really the beginning of the year, there's a lot of uncertainty in the economic environment. A lot of our clients the decisions are being moved away from the sustainability folks, and they're being pushed on the procurement folks. And we're getting a lot of questions about how could you perform your service cheaper? We have a mandate to cut costs across our entire network, and we're calling every vendor, and we need price concessions. We haven't seen this level of activity amongst our current client base in many, many years. And that's new. And coupled with that, we're seeing the volume of waste that we're receiving down by approximately 10% amongst our top 10 to 15 clients. So it's economically, companies are struggling. And while all of the companies we work with have sustainability goals, and they truly, we believe, want to do the right thing with their waste products, the focus is much more on we need the best price, and we're willing to sacrifice the material going to the best outlet. For example, we had a client tell us that they have 500 tons a month of material that is composted. For $5 a ton less, it can be landfilled. They want to switch to landfill because they would save $2,500 per month on that stream. The costs are being looked at in a much more stringent way than they were before, and it'll shift. But right now, it's a very uncertain time for everybody, and we're just trying to partner with our clients the best we can, so that we're helping them get the best outcomes that they can.
Kyle, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I'll share that very similarly. The clients who used to be talking a lot about sustainability and climate initiations or initiatives are now talking more about cost reduction. And so it hasn't changed how Ecotone is operating it. It has changed a little bit about how we pitch ideas and talking about our Zeus digester. What we're also noticing is that when we're talking to these customers, if they're trying to reduce costs, how can we instead increase their revenue? So that's where the output of what we call soil sauce is something we focus on, where if it's going to a high school, they can use the system on site, they put their food waste in, they also use that as a teaching opportunity, and then on the output, that soil sauce, they can use to decrease some of their fertilizer costs. So for example, we're decreasing fertilizer costs at a place called Penn Hills Charter School in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It is also an entrepreneurship school, so it was perfect where the students can learn about how to turn food waste into valuable byproducts. And so we're seeing that more and more that customers are more interested in a rebite model where they can actually take the byproducts and sell it, or they can take the byproducts and use it on site to decrease their costs. So just a little bit of a shift then about how we're talking to our customers.
Maybe I can add one more thought, Hunt. I think it's very difficult to drive change if the cheapest and easiest option is the landfill. So we either need to disincentivize that, thank you, either need to disincentivize that or incentivize the alternatives. And I think that can be done in a range of ways, starting from policy change. And then I think as a product developer and as an innovator in this space, I don't want to always be relying on policy to drive our success. So we need to really be challenging ourselves to be creating products and solutions that don't always rely on those types of incentives. So can we innovate more? Can we drive a product that actually is accessible, that's creating a better alternative, that is cost effective? But that's maybe a final thought on that.
Yeah, I have one thing. That was really well said. Our clients get caught up on how much something costs per ton to dispose of. And what we try to help them do is we work with each individual site, and we have our folks visit the sites. And what companies sometimes miss is that they may have, I'll use a round number, 100 tons per month going to the landfill. Well, we're able to walk to their facility and show them that, hey, actually 90 of those tons are actually either recyclable or can go to animal feed or compostable. And if you're able to actually divert that material out of the compactor and we can help you send it here instead, yes, it might be a little more expensive in some cases to send some stuff to compost, but you're going to get a rebate for all this cardboard you're throwing in the compactor. And you're going to get a rebate for the stuff that we can send to animal feed, and your total cost will go down by X. It's a hard concept for companies to grasp, but it's a lot of common sense. The other challenging part, though, is just change management. Is who do you have working in the factory? Who's responsible for taking the material from point A to point B? And how do we make sure that there are replicable, systemic ways that our clients can easily sort and separate their waste so that it does go to the optimal outlet?
I was going to say, we need to do something sooner and later. Landfills are filling up. Whether we focus on it now and get ahead of the policies that are changing this, or if we wait until the landfills are all filled up, we're going to need a solution. So it's better for us to get ahead of this now and address the problem and figure it out before we're forced to and have a lot of trash and waste that we don't know what to do with.
Where do you see policy or regulatory influence having a positive impact for your business model?
I can share some perspective. It's great to hear about a lot of the policies that either institute bans or try to create diversion tactics. I think where my frustration comes is the enforcement of those policies. There's not enough follow-up or action, in my opinion, once those policies are in place. We're seeing a lot of stick. I'd love to see more carrot. And I think we have a long list of participants who would be willing to engage and adopt these systems if there was, and I'm not even talking about new funding, but even access to existing funding to try and implement some new solutions. What we know by the statistics is that the existing status quo is not solving the problem. You've seen that in the latest data that Dana shared today. So to me, that means we need to try new things. And I think that starts with broadening the existing programs and considering new opportunities as well that allow for new systems to be implemented. So less stick, more carrot, and if you're going to use the stick, actually use it.
Yeah, we've seen a lack of enforceability with regulations. There are several states that have food waste bans. We don't see them being enforced all that rigidly, and so I think companies, if it's going to cost more to comply with the ban, they're not always doing it. Many do, but we're seeing a lot of companies waiting to be told that they have to do it, and they're just not being told as of yet.
Yeah, we've seen on both ends. So the front end, the positives, is that some of the grants that are coming out are helping municipalities to get Zeus digesters, get more programs in their area. We're sending one to California to a sovereign nation where they actually got a grant to have a Zeus digester on site. So we're super excited about that. On the other end, with the policy changes and the regulations, one of our first customers up in Rhode Island, they're called Plant City, they were actually getting a Zeus digester because sending food waste to a landfill, then they had to pay fines. So it was cheaper for them to get a Zeus digester over time and then use that soil salts to sell. We are noticing with some of our clients, we initially thought it was an education barrier where we're teaching them how to compost or how to process food waste, what we can take, what we can't take in the anaerobic digester. It's gone well for the first couple of months, but we're noticing there's not the initiative internally for them to push this and make sure people are still composting or using the anaerobic digester. And it seems as if it's coming down from up top. They're saying we need to have composting or AD systems in place, but then at the bottom level, it's kind of getting pushed to the side. So it's something for the corporation to say that they're actually doing it, but there's not really full follow through. So then we come on and we are doing constant education, making sure that people understand what the benefit is here. But I would like to see more follow through as well.
Well said. Seth, I'm interested in whether you're seeing new opportunities, emerging opportunities for upcycled food products or outlets for material types that previously were overlooked.
We're seeing some. Let me think. Let me think about that one. And I'll have some specific examples. So if you just come back to me on that one.
Sure.
Yep.
Well, I'm interested from the group about investor interest right now. What are the funders excited about? And what are you seeing? What are they, maybe if that's been changing lately, or just if not, then what do they continue to be excited about?
The problem's not going away. So the scale, I think, of the opportunity is certainly a great starting point. I joke that there's certainty in death taxes and waste. So from an investor point of view, the scope of the problem, I think, is really interesting. The challenge remains the value proposition. So how are we able to position a return on that investment over a timeline that fits an investor's profile? So that remains the challenge, and I think we've talked about a lot of different angles to deliver that return. But the reality is existing solutions are not keeping up with the problem, and that's going to require, I think, more innovation to catch up to it. So the population's growing, diets are evolving, landfills are reaching capacity, and it's very unpopular when you go to a council and propose putting in a new landfill next to your neighborhood. So that's not a great alternative, and I think that leaves innovation as a really great consideration.
Yeah, no, I think mid to long term, there's a tremendous amount of tailwinds in the sustainability space. I think demographically, I've got 3 children that are all in their early 20s, and that generation is going to demand that we are a more sustainable world. And as it relates to what their buying decisions are going to be, as they start to become the primary buyers of products in the next 10 to 20 years, they're going to want sustainable products. They're going to want to know where their food is coming from. They're going to want to know where their other products are coming from. So long term, I'm very bullish on where we're headed. And there's just a lot of momentum in the finance world to invest in sustainability-oriented companies because I think they see that the future is very bright. So I'm very excited about where we're headed.
I completely agree with that. We're seeing institutional investors really pushing forward with this. We're seeing mom and pop investors. We're seeing angel investors really pushing forward with food waste solutions. We're noticing that schools, they really want to become more food conscious. And we're seeing that if you can decrease the food waste on the output and understand the data of how much food waste you're generating, you can then decrease the food you're bringing in on the input and decrease your cost on purchasing power as well. So we're noticing that the return on investment in that aspect is very helpful for our customers. But super excited about where we're going. We're also noticing that our customers are really heavily paying for no odor and no pests. And they will pay top dollar for that as well. So if you can invest in aspects and innovations that can decrease odor, decrease pests, that's where it's going as well.
Great. I want to open it up for questions. I'm wondering if the audience here has questions. I see a couple. We have a microphone that will be coming around to you. Thanks, Jeffrey. Please speak into the mic if you can so we capture your question.
Mic check. Perfect. Thank you. By the way, thank you for the transparency. I think it's very important. I'm a founder, also creating a new solution to the global food waste crisis by creating a marketplace that will enable agri-food players to sell their surplus, organic waste, and byproducts to insect farms, to the insect industry, and to insect farms to sell their insect-based products back to the agri-food industry. I'm 25 years old. I've been working on this for a little over 2 years. We're about to launch. I wanted to ask you, since you 3 have been on this journey, what is something that you wish you had known at the beginning of your journey and why? Thank you.
Conserve as much cash as possible. Really, work as hard as you can and as lean as you can, and don't let if you do take on an investment, make sure you don't give up too much of your company.
I'll also say stay focused. That's the main thing that we need to. There's so many aspects in this business that you could focus on, many different avenues, but you know what you're good at, focus on that and stick to it, because that'll blossom and you'll grow from there.
And maybe just taking the opposite side, always be open and ready to pivot. Your original thesis might evolve over time, and certainly looking back over the last decade, the landscape has changed. So while it might look like the perfect underwriting of your business model today, that may change, and I think making sure as a founder that you're open-minded to that evolution is really important.
Also, make sure you grow partnerships. Partnerships will become very handy down the line.
Kyle, do you want to just take a second to talk about partnerships at Ecotone?
Yeah, for example, we manage a grid of distributed assets. We have operators who go to the systems and service them. So we love compost haulers. We work heavily with compost haulers. For one, in new areas, we'll work with them. They become some of our operators, where they can use a Zeus digester as an additional drop-off location. So I love working with compost haulers in the area, and it's also if we find a client or they find a client who our services or their services aren't right for each other, we'll swap and we'll share clients and introduce them to each other. So partnerships are great.
Hi, on the West Coast here, we have, in Oregon, we have a waste hauler that has a franchise agreement with the city, and we have a landfill that says it has 100 years left. So there's not very much incentive to keep food waste out of the landfill, and we have a waste hauler who doesn't want the city to cooperate with a food scrap collector that takes it out to the farms for composting. So what is your advice working with to break the franchise agreement hold that waste haulers have with cities?
We've been trying to crack that for a long time, and it's very difficult. We don't have the answer. So unless the municipalities want to break those contracts, it's an uphill battle, but we face it all the time.
One thought that comes to mind as we reflect on landfills reaching capacity is that the best time to have talked about alternative solutions was 100 years ago, and the second best time is today. And I think that's certainly an outlier to reflect on a landfill that has 100 years capacity. And if I was speaking to council, I'd certainly be trying to push them to be preserving that and not looking at that as a clock that just kind of reaches zero eventually. So if it's 100 years today, could additional solutions, considerations, or policies extend that even further? So while you're sitting in a very advantageous spot with the luxury of time, that's finite, and that's ticking down to zero right now. And I think a wise council would be looking to try and preserve that advantage for as long as they can.
Hi, I'm from Detroit, and I heard you guys say some of your companies moved from sustainability to the procurement space, just so they can save costs. And I'm wondering if you guys are showing over time the savings that these companies would see versus a direct savings of right now. So it can help them see their impact over time versus I'm going to just settle for taking this to the landfill because it's cheaper for my bottom line right now.
That's a good question. I'll start with one thing. So for all of our Zeus digesters, they have autonomous mechanisms inside to document the type of food waste going in, the amount, and then we show them how much carbon offsets that equates to when it's not going to a landfill. After each month, we look at how much they've processed, and then after a couple months, we start to look at how much they are not sending to landfill. And the thing we do next with them is talk to them about what were their previous invoices for landfill, and we try to decrease that. So we help them call waste management and decrease their pickups, so they're actually seeing a direct decrease in cost.
Yeah, in normal times, yes. The longer term value prop is usually successful. But in the current economic climate, we're just not seeing it. We're working with public companies. They have to report their earnings quarterly, and they want the quick wins. And it's not necessarily the best long-term decision. It's usually not. But there's very short-sighted thinking from the public companies that have to report out their earnings right now.
Oh,
We got
It's
we have a
okay.
couple questions. Go ahead.
hi. So I work for the city of Minneapolis, and I'm very interested in policy solutions. We have a slightly unusual situation in that we actually don't landfill our waste. We have an incinerator. But we're still seeing about 19% of what goes into the trash. We also have organics collection curbside. But with the trash, we're seeing about 19% of that, what goes to the incinerator, is food waste. So very interested in making it, educating the public, making it more accessible, all the things. I'm wondering, I mean, I'm hearing in general that, more carrot, less stick. So I'm wondering what advice you would have for cities from a policy or even program perspective to change residential behavior, but also the behaviors of our businesses.
Great to hear, that's how your city is thinking and attacking this program. One thought that comes to mind is how engaged residents in our municipal program become when cities empower them to take ownership of their waste by providing them tools and solutions to manage it themselves. And I think part of the problem has been municipalities have said, this is our problem, we're going to take care of it, send it to the curb and let us deal with it. And we've been really encouraged by the partnerships and the programs that we've rolled out, the participation rates that come with that. And to kind of go back to your question, you would be probably pleasantly surprised how much uptake you would see from your community if you were to support an initiative that had the community investing in the solution and also the end user kind of co-investing in it. So our programs often see some sort of subsidy model from the municipality along with some sort of participation from the resident who wants to kind of receive the tool, in our case it's a food cycler, to manage their food waste at the source. So it starts with those early adopters, and then the more challenging part when we do full municipal rollouts is, those who haven't volunteered for it but have actually been kind of given that in the way that they're given a curbside program. But those types of subsidy models or incentives at the onset will drive those who are most willing to kind of make a change. And once you start that, you really start to see the community rally behind it because they actually get to see the impact of their participation, which is very different from some of the existing models where it's, again, out of sight, out of mind. When they're actually the ones driving the change and it's happening in hours instead of several months, they actually feel like they're having an impact, and that becomes contagious. So I would encourage you to try and rally the community behind whatever program you put in and try to empower them to take ownership of the problem.
I'll also say, Allison, I'm happy to connect with you afterwards. Pittsburgh, the city of Pittsburgh, they did a very similar model where they rolled it out. I think it was over 8 months to incorporate the community. They started in a couple districts to see how it picked up. With composting, we had an AD system out there as well, and so there was some curbside. But they really wanted to see how people responded to it, get the awareness out there, and then from there bring on additional districts. So happy to share contacts with you for that.
All right, my question is for Kyle. I was just curious as to whether or not there were any feedstock constraints for the Zeus and what advice you're giving to your clients about digestate management.
Yeah, so early on with our first system, we had a whole pig go in. It was like a pork roast. And that really taught us early on that large bones were an issue. Aside from that, we don't really have any constraints on food waste. We can take smaller cooked chicken bones, things like that. We can take meats, leafy greens, veggies, dairies, anything like that. All organic matter, but not too many constraints around that. Yeah. So for a client on site, sorry, I missed that second part. So for a client, they'll take their food waste out, and instead of throwing it into a dumpster, they open a trash chute and drop it in. The system inside, it's an anaerobic digester. It blends all of the food waste. It goes through a series of pipes and tanks, turns into a gross smoothie that you do not want to drink. And then from there, we're breaking it down into the soil sauce over time. And we have our operators who still come in to double check and make sure there's no contaminants going through as well. But a series of cameras and everything taking all the images and understanding what is and what is not organic.
I think we have a couple more questions. We've only got 3 more minutes. Maybe that one, Jeffrey.
Hi, I appreciate what you said about multiple solutions, and I wonder if part of the solution that you provide, do you recommend food donations?
We always want to start every solution by trying to prevent as much food waste as possible. We don't claim to be experts in the policy and the regulations around what's allowed and not allowed, but we very much want to support generating less waste. So what we really kind of take a firm stance on with our municipal program is not thinking of us as a product company. We know our product will do what we say it does once you put food waste in and push the button, but there's a lot more that goes into a municipal program that's important to its success. So that starts with understanding what the current infrastructure allows, what the byproduct management will look like at the end, and the logistics and the flow of the food waste kind of in between those stages. But the end goal should be, by the end of this program, the behaviors have changed, and we've either opened up the possibility to more food donations, we've changed behavior to start wasting less food, and ultimately created systems that are diverting that waste from going to landfill. So I think it parlays one with the other and ideally creates this exponentiating impact of just greater diversion across the entire community. But it's one feeds the other, in my opinion.
Yeah, just real quick, we encourage our manufacturing clients to donate as much as they can, and we help facilitate that with transportation. And then if they're able to sell it to the discount stores, do that, and then comes to us eventually.
Well, thanks. I think that's all the time we have. There are some questions. Maybe we can follow up after the session, one-on-one, if you have a question for one of the panelists. But let's give a round to the panelists. Say thanks. I'm supposed to remind you that lunch is being served back down on the 3rd floor in the Columbia Ballroom. And also, while you're having lunch, check out the exhibitors, check out the activities that they have in the networking area, and enjoy the conference. Thanks everybody.